Hi, this video I'm going to be talking about part 3 of the speaking test and the tips and strategies that you can use to improve your performance in part 3. So let's get started. Now, just to remind you that part 3 is a free discussion, and that means that the examiner has some flexibility to ask their own questions, and this gives a bit of unpredictability to part 3. However, in this video I'm going to talk about 3 common areas where you can expect questions, and we'll also look at some useful language for this. So these are the 3 areas. The first one is comparisons, and then opinions, and then the third one is speculation. So let's go over these 3 areas in a little bit more detail, shall we? Okay, so to begin with comparisons then, and these are some example questions of comparisons. Is public transport better now than it was in the past? Which subject is more important, maths or history? Do men and women play the same kinds of sports? So of course with comparison you're talking about the differences between one item and another item. And of course if you're making comparisons it's useful to be familiar and good with the language of comparisons. So let me give you some examples. Actually there are many ways in English to talk about comparisons, but certainly these are very useful for you. So with this example, it's good to use the adverbs to talk about whether the difference is big or small. So you've got in the second box there, we've got words like much, a little, noticeably, significantly, and then you have your comparative adjective, more extensive, more comfortable, easier to use. So it might be something like, today's MRT is much more extensive than da 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 da. So it's useful to use those adverbs, and then your adjectives, try and make your adjectives as interesting as possible. Okay, now number 2 is opinions, and let's have a look at some example questions here. Obviously in part 3 the examiner is going to present you with an opinion. So the examiner might say some people think that blah blah blah. In the examples we've got some people think that air travel is very dangerous to the environment. Some people think that money can buy happiness. Some people think that advertisers tell lies about their products. And then of course the question is, do you agree? Now, don't worry about getting the right or wrong answer. There is no such thing about the right answer or the wrong answer to these questions. It's not a test like that. These questions are just designed to make you express your opinions, and it's how you describe your opinion that is being assessed, not if you agree or disagree. So let's look at some of the language here, and of course basically you're going to either agree or you're going to disagree. The main question is, how strongly do you agree or how strongly do you disagree? So I've got some example language here. For example, you can say, I completely, I totally, I absolutely agree. That would be 100%. And then I mainly agree. To a large extent I agree. Those kind of phrases would be something like 70 or 80% agreement. And then I think this is generally largely true, might be something around 60% agreement. So if you do not agree 100%, which is very likely, of course you need to talk about the conditions under which you agree, and then the conditions under which you don't agree. Let's look at the disagree language. So they're quite similar really. I completely, totally, absolutely disagree. I mainly disagree. To a large extent, I disagree. I think this is generally untrue, that kind of thing. So, number 3 then is speculation. And let's have a look at the examples of speculation questions. So here we are. Will public transportation become more popular in the future? In the next 10 years, will people become more or less happier? Will the eating habits of people change? So of course, you can see that speculation is talking about the future. And for this, you do need to have the language of describing the future. So here are some examples. Essentially, it's about your certainty. So you can have strong certainty about the future, and you'll be using words like will completely, will absolutely, will definitely. Or you might have medium certainty about the future. In this case, you can use words like could, might, or may. So public transportation might become more popular in the future, but I'm not sure, it might not. And then weak certainty, which really means negative, meaning that you think it probably won't happen, then you could use words like perhaps, slightly possible, a faint possibility that. So you might say, well, there is a faint possibility that public transport will become more popular. So the other thing to remember with part 3 is that the examiner will ask follow-up questions. And follow-up questions are designed to make you discuss and describe your ideas in more detail. And here are the examples of the kind of things that you'll get. How do you feel about that? Do other people agree with you? Can you give an example? Will it change in the future? Why? Why not? What do you mean when you say da da da? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? What are the advantages or disadvantages of this? So when you do part 3, remember to be ready for those kind of questions, and really you should make a note of these follow-up questions for your practice. So if you say, I think that public transport will become more popular in the future, then you need to think, well, if the examiner might ask, how do you feel about that? Do other people agree with you? So be ready with your answers and be aware of these follow-up questions. In fact, practicing answering the follow-up questions can be a really useful thing to improve your performance. There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Tips and strategies for part 3 of the speaking test, which is the last 5 minutes of the test. Now, that covers all of the training related to the speaking module. Make sure you've gone through all of the videos in speaking, and then you can move on and look at one of the other modules, writing, listening, or reading.